Welcome to Strategy Simplified and to today's episode with Rafa. Rafa is an ex-McKinsey consultant who thought that she might stay at McKinsey forever, but then didn't. And then she joined a FinTech company, thinking that she might be there for a while, but she didn't stay forever. Now, Rafa has taken on the challenge of applying to and getting admitted to business school. And so in today's episode, she's going to talk a little bit about her journey to doing just that. But wait for it. At the end of the conversation, there's a big reveal about where Rafa got in and about where she ultimately chose to go. Thanks for joining this episode. Let's get right into it.
I'm Jenny Ray LaRue, and I'm here today with Rafa, who is back on Strategy Simplified after an earlier episode. We're now going to talk a little bit about her career journey and her most recent decision, which was whether or not to go to business school and where. Rafa, welcome back to Strategy Simplified. We're glad to have you.
Hey, Jenny, thank you for having me back here. I'm really grateful about talking to you again.
Well, first of all, for everyone who didn't get a chance to listen to the first episode, can you just share the overview of your career journey and the key steps that led you to the decision to ultimately apply to business school? And then we'll pause it there for a second.
Yeah, sure, of course. So I'm Rafaela. You can all call me Rafa. I'm from Avaré. It's a very small city in the countryside of Brazil, but I live in São Paulo for almost 10 years right now. I pursued a bachelor in law at University of São Paulo. But during law school, I realized that my passion actually lied at the intersection of business and tech knowledge. And that led me to a 4-year path at McKinsey. So I joined McKinsey as a summer business analyst, like a program in the middle of university, like for 3 months. And I stayed up to senior business analyst. There, I developed foundational business skills in addition to the strategy part and to the technical part of Excel, corporate finance, and all of that. But in addition to consulting, I've had the privilege of being at the forefront of 3 early stage ventures, having experienced both failure and success. And currently, I'm head of strategic projects at Barchi, and Barchi is a fast-growing fintech here in Latin America. But my passion, I always knew that my passion was more on the tech side with business than on traditional business and perhaps consulting long-term career. So that drew me to startups. And my ultimate aspiration is to build a business that promotes financial inclusion in Brazil. And we can talk more about that later. But that's why I was looking for the MBA in the US as an opportunity to become a more prepared leader and create a global network.
I love it. So first of all, let's go back to something that you said but didn't say, which is that you left McKinsey after 4 years to do something else. So what was your decision like to leave McKinsey? And then how did that ultimately tie into your later decision to apply to business school?
Yes, sure. So that was one of the toughest decisions that I made because I was in McKinsey for almost 4 years, and I was almost at that time when you receive the sponsorship to go pursue your MBA. Like you do what we call a third year out, that's a second-man program that you can work somewhere else, and then you go for your MBA program. And the good part about that is that they sponsor your MBA, so they pay for your tuition at one of those schools. And that was a big deal for me.
Generous. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was a huge deal for me because I come from a very simple family. So I knew I couldn't afford with my own means to go for a program like that in the US. So I love that part of the offer from McKinsey and from top consulting firms. And besides that, I really love working with projects. So being able to change things every 3 months. However, I felt that I wasn't able to get more focus on something that I love that was more the tech aspects. So I started doing there some analytical projects called Advanced Analytics at McKinsey related to machine learning. And this was like 3 years ago. So we would do machine learning models and implementing clients to help solve business problems. And I love that. But as a business analyst, I was not able to get specialized or to focus on those types of projects. I would need to do different types of projects and industries. And I already knew that I wanted to work at startups. I like the environment of like very fast pace, and you are actually you are building things, and every time you are handling a different problem. So I wanted that, and I got the opportunity to be part of the founding team of a startup, and that's the decision that I made of leaving to be part of the founding team of something that I believed in, and I would have much more autonomy and a different level of experience. And knowing that I wanted to pursue the MBA, I thought that would be beneficial as well. Like another story to tell, a different story to tell that was more aligned to the path that I want to pursue in the future. So I thought that that was helpful for me. Like I built my foundational business base with consulting, which was amazing for me coming from law school. But I felt that in order for me to tell my story and what I wanted to do in the future, I needed to make the leap of faith and already start on the startup world.
I love it. Well, you've mentioned a couple of times, like you knew that you wanted to get this MBA and have this global experience and have a global network and really, shape the way that you think. But how did you know when the right time was? That's a really tricky question for a lot of people to answer.
Yeah, I think when I was in consulting, that was the easy part because everyone follows the same process. So you know that you do 2 or 3 years of consulting, and then you will apply for the MBA, and you do some kind of work before, and you go for the MBA. So there was not a lot of question in terms of when there. But once I left McKinsey, then it started the problem. Like, when is the right time for me to go? I haven't founded my own startup so far. That's something I plan to do in the future. But for now, what I've done is be an early and very important member of those early stage startups. And that's what I do at Barchi, what I have done on the last 1 year and a half. But that allows me to, if I decide that is best for me, I can leave because it's not my startup. Yeah. So I can make the decision. So that was good for me. And I thought that it was a good time right now. I have 5 years of professional experience, almost 5 years of professional experience. And I feel like I'm in the right point between having a good background of experience that is enough for me to connect with other people and to share what I've learned. But I'm not so in my career, or I have not started a company yet that wouldn't allow me to make the decision for 2 years. Because after all, you were taking out like 1 or 2 years and focusing on that program. So for me, that was the rationale. But I would say that in general, people should understand like what are they trying to achieve with the MBA. For example, whether it's pivoting into a new industry or it's just advancing in your career in the place that you are. And that will be very important for deciding your timing, if it's like faster or maybe waiting a little bit more.
I love that. Well, a common question that we get, let's talk about some more specific MBA consideration now. A common question we get is, which MBA program gives me the best chance to pivot? Often for us, that's into consulting, but for others, it's either out of consulting or into potentially consulting, but maybe with some other options. How much of a factor was the decision about pivoting for you in your choice of where to apply? And also, like, what would you recommend? Was it just like, I know that I want X, Y, and Z factors of the MBA to give me the most options, or was it something that was a little bit more focused? Just talk us through your framework.
Yeah, sure. So that was definitely one of the factors that I considered in my decision. What I did, and I know that a lot of people do this or they do in a different way, but I basically have a spreadsheet where I listed, 10 MBA programs that I had in my mind. And I listed all of the criteria that were important for me. And I attributed like points for each of the criteria. And then as I studied about the schools and as I talked to people from the schools, I was able to populate this spreadsheet with information. And that was a good, straightforward way for me to see and visualize which schools were stronger in each part. So that's what I did in general, to have a framework to understand what would make more sense. And in my list, this was one of the important criteria. So for me, I'm very interested in finance and tech. Right now I work in FinTech, so I really like both industries and I like the financial services. So although I'm not pivoting, I wanted to make sure that I choose an MBA program that would help me get farther in that industry, especially in Latin America, because I want to come back and focus here. So that was important for me. And I see a lot of friends that consider the same things for different industries. For example, I'm not changing industry, but I have friends that are from consulting and they want to go into media, for example. That is a very big change. Or people that are from finance and want to go into tech. So when you are changing, I think it's even more important because you don't only want to make sure you are able to continue and succeed, but you want to make sure that the school helps you get your foot at the door. And sometimes that is difficult depending on where you are coming from. So definitely an important thing. And for me, what I would suggest and what I did is all the schools publish like their recruiting data, basically where they are placing more candidates in terms of industries and functions. So I studied that like extensively. I downloaded all and I read and I tried to understand the nuances and the difference between the programs that I was interested. And there you can see some difference. For example, some schools, the top industry that they place people is consulting. Some schools, the top industry is finance, or the top industry is tech. So there's a difference that for me was really important. Happily for people that want consulting, all schools place a lot of people in consulting, which is great. But for our other industries, that can be different. So that is the first thing. The other thing that I did is understand the alumni network of each school. So I could go into LinkedIn and find the companies that I'm interested in that industry and check if where the alumni are mostly from. Is it from Chicago Booth? Is it from Harvard or some other school? And finally, I would take a look at the program in terms of the academics and resources, like the classes and certificates they offer, that will also give you an idea of how focused they are or they are not in some topic.
Hey, Strategy Simplified, Jay, quickly popping in here. Do you want help with your business school application or interview process? Our team can help. We spend 10 years working with candidates, helping them put their best foot forward in the business school process. We want to help you tell your best story, whether that's through edits, through mock interviews, or more. There are links in this episode's show notes to learn more about how we can help you even work with us. All right, without further ado, let's get back to the show.
Well, we haven't even talked about where you've applied, and we're not yet going to talk about where you're going. But I understand that you were accepted into a bunch of the world's top business schools. Can you just share the list of a few of those schools that you were accepted into, and really specifically 2 pro tips that you used, either that somebody told you or that you incorporated to tell your story that helped you stand out in those really competitive application processes?
Yes, sure. So I wanted to apply for programs in the US and for the top programs in the US. That was really important for me. And then I had a bunch of different criteria in terms of industry, location, the flexibility of the program. And I ended up being approved in Kellogg Business School, Chicago Booth, Stanford, and Harvard. Starting it all, I was really focused on Stanford. So mainly because of entrepreneurship and technology. And that was also one of the reasons why I left McKinsey. I thought that for me to differentiate myself from the consultant pool, I would have more chance going through startups and already telling my story in the way that I wanted to tell than if I stayed at consulting, for example. So I was approved in those 4 schools.
I remember Bain sponsoring a lunch in Atlanta for, I think it was Harvard Business School, maybe it was a few different business schools, and a number of the associate consultants went there. And I thought, we're in a pretty cool place. They're probably going to want us just because we're at Bain. And they were very quick to say, look, just because you went to Yale and Bain doesn't mean enough to us. Like you have to have the X factor, that special something. So I love that you knew that in the beginning as well. And I was shocked when I found that out. I thought, how much better could it get than this? But they said, no, you have to be this, and something else. I thought, wow, okay, this is a new ball game. But so what were your 2 pro tips? Yeah, same, right? Yeah. What were your 2 pro tips to stand out?
Yeah, I would say that one thing that is very basic because everyone talks about, but it really makes a difference is the GMAT. So, or the test that you choose to take, but start soon with that because you need to get, depending on the school that you choose, you need to get at a very competitive score. And that takes time depending of like your background or how easy you work with math, for example. So I would definitely say focus on that because it will be important even when you have a great story behind it. And the second, I would say, as soon as you can understand your story, like what are your main achievements, the things that you were proud of, the things that make you you. And that is not easy. At least it wasn't easy for me. Like it took a lot of reflection, hours of reflection, talking to people, family members, friends, to understand like what are my core values and how I showed those core values during my story. So I think I only did that once I was finished with the GMAT and I got a not a lot of time left after that. So I would say start at least thinking about that as soon as you can and try to write down the things that you are thinking.
I love it. And then I think the real final question that I have for you before we move on to some of the fun questions. Well, actually, this is the final question. Then we'll talk about how you chose where you're going to go.
Okay.
But the final question for the audience is just how can someone who's listening, a prospective MBA, work with you as a coach or a counselor to put their best foot forward in both applications and interviews? How do you feel you can help unlock stories for other people after going through the experience on your own?
Sure. So I've had the pleasure to work with management consulting for the last 2 years, helping candidates that are applying to consulting. And I always did that, like start by understanding the candidates' goals and where they are right now, and then we can put together a plan. And I would say that for the MBA, it's a long-term game. Like it takes a year, sometimes a year and a half for you to get prepared. And it's a lot of strategy involved. So I would just love to do the same, understand the experience, help put together a plan for the applications, how to review the essays, and actually preparing and doing mock interviews was very helpful for me to feel prepared. So that would be something that I would love to do with candidates as well.
I love it. Rafa, before I ask you the last question, which is where you decided to go and why, do you have any funny stories from your campus visits? Anything that stood out that really was insightful for you as you were going through the process of looking at the schools?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Brazil. We have a pretty warm weather here. And it was my first time outside of Brazil. I was going to the US and I started in Boston. I was visiting HBS first. It was kind of rainy, really cold. The landscape was not great during that period. So I wore like some coats, etc. And when I got down to Stanford that I was visiting as well, like on the next day, it was really sunny and they have these fountains and you had like students just in bathing suits and going to the fountains and having all of that experience in that warm weather. So Stanford kind of felt like a resort, and it was really funny to see the difference in terms of weather and how HBS was saying that every time it happens like that. So you have a very rainy weather in Boston and a great weather in Palo Alto.
I think that's so funny. Well, great. Let's finish before we move to the fun personal questions with where did you decide to go and why?
Yeah, that was a very difficult decision. I started everything thinking about Stanford. And in the middle of the process, I connected very well with Chicago Booth in terms of the data side and how analytical they are. But even going to a resort at Stanford, Harvard was kind of magical for me. I don't know. Something changed when I was there and I sat in a class and got the opportunity to see all of those different people from several countries and understanding all the impact of that. It just connected more with me and I decided to go to Harvard.
Amazing. Well, we're excited to continue to partner with you while you're at HBS and we're cheering you on.
Definitely.
So keep us posted. I know the listeners of Strategy Simplified would love to know what you end up doing.
Sure.
So now if you're game, let's move on to some personal questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, first one, in an alternate universe, you have to choose a completely different career. You're not allowed to be a consultant. You can't go into FinTech. What would your other career be?
I would say that is actually something that I would have done when I was younger if I wasn't so focused on like business and career. That was art history. I really like to understand like how history and art is connected in terms of like cinema, but even like old paintings. So I like to read about that and watch documentaries. So I will probably do something like that when I'm, I don't know, 50 or 60. So it would be that.
I love it. What is an item from your bucket list that you haven't checked off yet, and why is it on there?
Yeah. So basically, my mom is my all-time inspiration and the reason of everything that I'm able to achieve. So I really want to take her to Portugal because it's one of her dreams to go there, especially a city called Fatima. That is very big city for like Catholics. So I just want to take her there and hope to do that soon.
Gorgeous. And then last question, what is the most unique food you've ever tried? I tried some interesting things in Brazil, so I'm curious if it's a Brazilian food or something else.
I would say that recently, when I was in San Jose for Stanford, I was able to taste Ethiopian food, and it was a very different experience with all of the sauces and different tastes that they have and textures of food. So it was very unique. But I'm really fond of Lebanese food. So we have a lot of Lebanese food here in Brazil, and I love it.
Amazing. Stunning. Well, thank you so much, Rafa, for your insights, for your stories, and congratulations on your entry into so many different schools. And we know that you have a lot ahead of you. Excited to stay in touch. And thank you for offering your coaching and encouragement to the listeners of Strategy Simplified. Really great to have you on today.
Definitely. Thank you for having me here again.
Thanks for joining another podcast. We love putting this on every week for you twice a week. And we'd also love your help to get the word out to more folks. So there's two ways you can do that. Number one, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Number two, share it with a friend, with a colleague, someone you think might be interested in the content. It really helps get the word out. So thank you in advance. Finally, if you have any questions about what we talked about today or in another episode, if you want to submit yourself as a guest, if you have questions about filling out an application to a top business school or consulting firm, we'd love to help. Reach out today, team@managementconsulted.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you again next time.